Your identity is inextricably linked to the biological makeup of your mother and father. But what happens when you are born a crime? Let's get started. Good evening and welcome once again to the Democracy Gauge. I'm Bongani Bingo. Listen, our program puts you, the South African citizen, and your lived experience of these last 25 years of democracy at the heart of our show. Tonight, we highlight the impact of one of the most appalling laws of apartheid South Africa, the Immorality Act. This was a law that made it illegal for white people to have relationships with anyone else who wasn't also white. But many children were born from such relationships. So, what happened to them? Well, that brings us then to our poll question. We're asking, did apartheid's Immorality Act mess up our identity and sense of belonging? You can choose from our standard three colors. Green is for yes, yellow is for maybe, and of course, red is for no. You can do all of that at sabcnews.com, and we extend the conversation, of course, to Facebook and Twitter. Those are our hashtags on the screen, SABCDG25 and hashtag SABC News. But to kind of get the ball rolling and to set the context, our producer Nono Magongoma reminds us precisely what the Immorality Act was all about.
The inhumane apartheid government went as far as telling you who you could love. 30 September 1926, the government passed the Immorality Act into law. The law made it illegal for people of different races to have sex with each other. In 1950, the law was amended that whites cannot have relations with non-white people. Marriage between whites and blacks was a criminal offense, but it didn't stop people from disobeying the law.
I must confess that we haven't done any umsobenzis, but as far as the wedding was concerned, I dressed as a makoti. I got a married name, Nomeli Sizwe.
The law also nullified interracial marriages of South Africans that occurred outside the country. People who broke this law faced jail or were fined. On the 24th of February 1962, 23-year-old Joe Law was sentenced to 6 months in the Johannesburg Regional Court for conspiring with Pamela Beira, a 19-year-old white woman, to breach the Immorality Act. But what happened to the children of such relationships? Their identity, which was linked to their parents, was considered illegal in the eyes of the racist government. In 2003, Happy Sindane made headlines across the world after he went to a police station in Bronkhortspruit, northeast Gauteng, and claimed he had been kidnapped from his white family to work as a slave in the Tweefontein township. After a 4-month inquiry, the Bronkhortspruit Children's Court found that Sindane's real name was Ebi Mzaiya, a son of a black domestic worker, Rina Mzaiya, and that his father was probably a white man, German immigrant Henry Nick, who had employed Mzaiya. But Happy died not knowing the truth behind his identity. If you were a product of the Immorality Act, you either lived in fear with your family, protecting you from the authorities, or you were adopted, or if your family had means, you were sent overseas. No matter what the option, you could not fully embrace who you were and celebrate your identity. Nono Magongoma, SABC News.
Your very identity a crime. Imagine that. Well, Sarah Jane King doesn't have to imagine. She was born in 1980 as a result of an interracial relationship. She wrote a book in the hopes of documenting and sharing her story. And what happened after the book was released will have you in tears. She joins us now from our Cape Town studios. Sarah Jane, good evening to you. Welcome to the Democracy Gauge. I mean, it's an absolutely extraordinary story, but it's Trevor Noah who frames it as born a crime. That's exactly what you were, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Bongani. Thanks so much for having me. I was born a crime. My biological parents had a relationship in the late 70s, early 80s, and I was the result of that relationship. And the story that then unfolded became a search for my own identity.
I mean, just talk to me about how they dealt with it and what I can only term as extraordinary, your mom's attempts to basically erase your existence.
Absolutely, and hence the title of the book as well. So my biological mother, when she discovered that I wasn't the product of the relationship with her white husband, and rather that of my biological father, a plan was concocted to take me out of the country. She was British by birth, and so she took me to the UK, had me adopted there by a white couple, and returned to South Africa and told her friends and family that baby Caroline, as I then was, had died.
So when did you become aware of the details surrounding your birth as you were growing up in the UK?
I was about 14 years old when I found a letter from my biological mother which detailed the nature of what had happened. And you can imagine going through the normal teenage angst at 14 to discover that because of the colour of my skin, I had to be killed, I had to be gotten rid of. And it was absolutely devastating. And that, I think, really was the catapult for me, was the impetus that led me, the catalyst to go on and find out who I really was, where did I really come from, and what was this awful thing called apartheid that meant that I was questioning and had been questioning my identity and who I was.
Was there any part of you in your attempts to reconcile what your mother, your biological mother, must have been going through that perhaps could understand that she had been married to someone else who wasn't your biological father, and that maybe it wasn't race, maybe that was the issue?
She made it very clear in the letter that I found when I was 14 that the reason for the adoption and that awful lie was because of the colour of my skin. In fact, she wrote in the letter, I must admit that it was based on the colour of your skin that I had to make this decision.
Sure. As a 14-year-old, how do you absorb that? What do you make of it?
Well, as I say, it was absolutely devastating, and I think the core of all of us, the thing that makes us human, is our ability to identify, is our ability to relate, is our ability to belong. And I just felt that I didn't belong. Growing up as a black child in a very, very white part of the UK, having no connection to my family in South Africa, black or white, and it was devastating. And I think that sense of identity, or that lack of identity, for me, was something that led to very, very self-destructive behaviours in the future.
So the journey then to reconnect to those roots, to find out the uncomfortable truths, how did that go about?
So I came back to South Africa in 2007, and at that point I discovered that I had a half brother from my biological mother, and we met and we had a relationship. But my South African identity, and I guess that's what we're really speaking to here, my South African identity came from my father, and all attempts to find him at that stage had been to no avail. I'd hired private investigators. I'd literally I'd scoured the country trying to find this man who gave birth to me, who made me a black South African, who made me a South African. And it was incredibly difficult. And the relationships that I had and lost along the way, largely because of this lie that had been told. And I think we need to remember that mine is just one of many, many stories as the legacy of apartheid, this search for identity and this feeling of not belonging, or belonging between two worlds, and particularly in a South African context, the two worlds being so enormously divided. Very, very difficult.
And the search to find him led to what?
The search to find him led to me finding him, which was just extraordinary. After the book came out, I did an interview in which I gave his real name, and I was desperate to find him. And Black Twitter, being what it is, galvanized, and within 24 hours somebody had sent me a message and said, we think we found your father. And I phoned the number that was on the email, and sure enough, it was my biological father. And 7 days later, I flew up to Johannesburg, and we met for the first time in what I'm sure you can imagine was an incredibly emotional reunion. Absolutely the best day of my life.
So it's one thing to reflect back, obviously, on what the Immorality Act was about and what it would have done to children like you. But now fast forward, it's democratic South Africa. Our society remains embroiled in these challenges. The racial fault lines are still strong. How then do you navigate your sense of being a South African in 2019?
It's a difficult one, and I think because of we are so obsessed still in South Africa with putting people into boxes. We want to know who people are. We still, although maybe not in practical terms, but on a day-to-day basis, we still go by that old classification system. And I think what's interesting for me as a black South African is, first of all, is that I identify as a black South African, which a lot of people find very difficult to accept. They don't understand why I would say that. People want to give me the term coloured, which is not a term that I either accept or recognise. I sound the way I do, so there's that confusion. So with all of these things, it almost feels like I'm being tugged in different directions, and that there is a box that should exist that doesn't exist. And I wonder if a lot of other South Africans of mixed parentage feel that way, is that when it comes to ticking those awful boxes that I refuse to do, there isn't one for us. There isn't one, and there certainly isn't one that makes everyone comfortable. From my point of view, it's about being true to who I feel I am. My South African identity comes from my father. My father is a black South African, and I'm a proud black South African.
Sarah Jane King, yours is an absolutely extraordinary story, and more people should read, in fact everyone should read your book, Killing Caroline. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on the Democracy Gauge. Of course, there are many stories, exactly as Sarah Jane King points out, that are like hers. Killing Caroline is the title of the book. You best believe it, it's riveting as a read. Now, a reminder that today's poll topic, we're asking, did apartheid's Immorality Act mess up our identity and sense of belonging? Those are the three colors you choose from. Green is yes, yellow maybe, red is no. You can go to sabcnews.com to vote, and of course you can also be part of the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, remembering to use the hashtag SABCDG25 and hashtag SABCNews.
The Drakensberg is the name given to the eastern portion of great escarpments, which encloses the central Southern Africa plateau. The name means Drakensberge in Afrikaans and is called Ukahlamba in isiZulu, which means barrier of spears. The Drakensberg escarpment stretches for over 1,000 kilometers from Eastern Cape, then forms the border between Lesotho and the Eastern Cape, and the border between Lesotho and KwaZulu-Natal. It then forms the border between KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State, and next as the border between KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga. It winds north through Mpumalanga, where it includes features such as Blade River Canyon, Three Rendezvous, and God's Window. The Drakensberg is the highest mountain range in the country, reaching 3,482 meters above sea level.
When you put 5 girls against 5 guys, of course it's going to be lit.
Andile, what's the next challenge?
Witness all the fun, tension and laughs as we see how well friends know each other to win a luxury cruise. Join us as we bring the excitement every weekend at 6 p.m. only on SABC 1, Mzansi for sure.
Today, it's one of the greatest days at Manamani Primary School.
We are very much happy. You can see all the learners here. Today, they are so much happy to receive this toilet today.
Welcome back. This is now the segment of the show we call The People's View. And you know, I always say, if you want to be a part of the conversation, simply send us that email. We'll talk to you on social media, via Facebook Messenger, via Skype, and every now and again, we'll bring you into the studio. And that's exactly what we're doing this evening. Our guest is joining me now in studio. Themba Jack, the son of Mkhuseli and Karen Jack, was born from an interracial marriage. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, I have to ask you, I mean, we played in our introductory piece this evening the story of your family growing up. Now, unlike Sarah Jane, you knew your biological parents, they were together. Yeah. What was that experience of growing up with democracy?
Well, I think it was extremely normal. Like, when I was growing up, I never faced any really difficult challenges socially or politically or anything. I had a very comfortable life.
So you were just a normal kid.
Yes.
So when people like Trevor Noah talk about born a crime, or when you hear a story like Sarah Jane King's, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I have a sister, and I used to think, oh, well, okay, she's lighter than me. That's interesting. But I never thought of us as mixed race or biracial or anything like that. I was just a normal person. I don't know.
So, I mean, it's one thing to think that within the confines of your own home, depending on the safety net that your folks have provided for you. But as you step into the outside world, did you then begin to realize, oh, our family is perhaps unique?
Yes, I did, yeah. A lot of times I kind of felt like I didn't belong here or there. And that was quite frustrating because lots of my friends, well, the first high school I went to, it was kind of racially, I don't know.
Not good, the mixing wasn't as strong as you were used to?
Yeah. And so I was caught in between everywhere.
And how deliberate were your parents about making sure that you were connected to both sides of your heritage?
I think they handled that extremely well. We lived in the suburbs and still do, and we would regularly go to the location or go to imisebenzi or anything.
So language would have been one way to do it. Did you learn vernacular language?
I did, but my Xhosa is still not that great.
It's shaky.
Yeah.
So how have you resolved then all the issues that we're looking at today? Or do you think that growing up in South Africa in the last 25 years, because you're 25, right?
Yes.
Means that we're past all of those issues for someone like you?
Well, I believe we're not past that, race and everything. I get frustrated at how South Africa is still so concerned about, well, I barely ever want to say race. I prefer saying ethnicity or ethnic group and that.
And when people want to box you, what do you do?
Yeah, that is not really a fun thing, I guess.
How do you deal with it?
I step away and I don't really engage if they want to box me up or anything.
So do you feel maybe even uncomfortable with a word like biracial?
Not really. As long as it's, well, the most relevant or appropriate term is cool with me, I guess.
All right, but it's a work in progress, isn't it, for you and for the country?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Themba Jack, of course, in that early part of our insert as we started the show. Now, if you want to be part of the People's View in our next program, send us that email, dg25@sabc.co.za. At the end of this episode, I'll be throwing forward to tomorrow's topic. Now, after the break, we travel to Mpumalanga, where we meet 33-year-old Nelisiwe Matsebula, who looks after 11 children on her own. They live in an informal settlement, in a shack really, that's on the brink of collapse. Stay tuned for that story.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, ek dink was ons almal was ek ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke so ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho iseng makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel, want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, Channel 404.
Did you know the big hole digging started in 1871 and ended on the 14th August 1914? The hole produced 2,722 kgs of diamonds. However, one diamond as huge as 490 carat of stone found in the open prior 1868 gave them the interest to dig. Extracted from 22.5 million tons of soil. Today, the hole sits at a breathtaking 214 meters deep. Kimberley Big Hole attracts tourists from all over the world, taking a vintage tram past the city, then cycling around the Big Hole.
I use my name first and foremost, that's all I heard, and from using the name I got a small loan of 8,000 rand.
I remember there is a time la sa zama kumfunela umsebenzi.
Welcome back. Of course, through the Democracy Gauge, we've been going around the country talking to South Africans about their stories from the last 25 years. And you can find all of those stories, by the way, on our website, sabcnews.com/elections. And we go to our map and you can click on any of these icons to get our stories. And today, of course, we are in Mpumalanga and we're looking at the story of Nelisiwe Matsebula. This is somebody who lives in Barberton in Mpumalanga. She's 33 years old and for more than a decade has looked after 11 children all on her own. Here's her story.
Igama lami nginelisiwe sibonga Matsebula ngihlala eBarberton extension 10 mina 33 years ngeminyaka mina almost close to 12 years ngiphila la extension 10 eBarberton ngihlala nebantwana babosisi wami labashona sisi wami lomunye washona washiya lababili lomunye washiya labayi4 ngihlala la kulendlu lena ngicabanga ukuthi sukusela ngeminyaka wa94 we democracy kule 25 years lekhona mina umehluko angibonanga empilweni yami nebantu abami ngoba solo ngisaphila under simo lesi anginandlu anginalutho masingena ku94 ngacabanga ukuthi kutawuba nemehluko nami njengaloku ngibona ukuthi kuyaqala lishintsho libaliningi inkululeko nathi siyayithola kodwa kweyami impilo ngisengakawuboni lo mehluko kodwa ngisanelithemba futhi sifisela nebantu abethu ukuthi bangaphili under timo thine lesiphile kuto before ukelwabona before 94 tukwe safety ebantwana yona under lesimo lengiphila kuso kubamba abantwana ayikho isaved ngoba ngigcine sengilimalelwa umntwana ngoDisember ngitizathu futhi ukuthi bayabathi bantwana mos banokubuka laba abantwana ukuthi baphila njani uyabona and then ababona umkhukhu ekhaya kubo naloko kuyabashaya ngaletinye tikhathi ngiyolenza isikhathini lesiningi unokubalekela kasisi wakhe kule mibhelebhele lemithathu ngikhetha lona lobovu ngoba kungimanje ngisengakalitholi lisito kahulumende mara nginelithemba ukuthi nami lelinye ilanga ngitawugcina ngiliphakamisile leli green ngisho ngithi lisito ngalithola.
So where were you on this day, the 20th of March in 1994? Well, of course, building up to that first democratic election. And, you know, every day seems, as we look back now, to have been momentous thanks to our SABC archives. So we've been able to trace events every day as we build up to the 27th of April. Now, in 1994 today, the Workers' List Party, remember them? Well, they were launching their manifesto in Johannesburg.
Socialism, socialism, socialism,
the number of support that we actually owe and that we have amongst people in this country, given a short space of time that we could actually go around and collect more than 10,000 signatures at this stage. It's a clear indication really that there are a lot of people who support our ideas and there are a lot of strength within our own ranks. I will actually further go and read some main crux of the manifesto, which I would like to the press. We stand for the right to work. We believe that the right to work in this country is a fundamental aspect, and such a right to work must be included for people who are unemployed at this stage, and it must be guaranteed, it must become law, and we believe that there must be a strong campaign against retrenchments, and people who retrenching people must be blacklisted and fought. And the second point that we also see is quite of paramount importance is that at the stage, the nature of our economy is the fact that more than about 0.1% of the population owns over 80% of the wealth in this country. Such as like big companies like Anglo Val, Sanlam and the rest. What we are saying, it is unfair. Whilst millions of people need to live on farms, need to live without food, while there are a few people who runs and controls this economy. We stand for workers' control, democratic worker control over the means of production in this stage in our society. And our ideas is based on a democratic socialist planning of the economy is. We also believe that there must be land to the working people. Those who work on the land must control the land.
Ambrose Solomon from the Workers' List Party. They come and they go, don't they? Right, let's have a look at today's poll results. This is how you voted. There are the numbers coming up on your screen. 70% of you saying yes, 14 maybe, and 16 no. I wonder who that is. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch. Tomorrow, of course, we raise a new poll question, and that means our poll is now open as we commemorate Human Rights Day by looking at a painful and yet poignant moment in our history, the Sharpeville Massacre. Don't miss it. We'll be asking, do some people enjoy more human rights than others? Until then, ubusuku benzolo. Good night.